Right, so we onto the IFA or Financial Planning and Focus panel. So we've heard a lot about times of crisis and times of change and money flowing offshore and the slow growth locally. And I think what we can all say we've seen in market cycles is that during tough times, the most efficient businesses survive. And so I've got an expert panel today to talk to us about the greatest challenges in the financial advice ecosystem in South Africa, but also what are the most interesting opportunities and how they're looking at that. So Kathryn Dongen is joining us today. You might recognize her from her former role at PMX, where she was the MD of the South African business. And in May of this year, she joined Carmel Wealth, which is a new initiative that's been founded, a mix of local and offshore investors that are going around acquiring independent advice practices to build a scaled wealth management business. So welcome, Kath. Thanks. Come up, yeah. And then Elke Zeki is joining us from Foundation Family Wealth, where Elke is the head of financial planning. She is an accomplished financial planner that specializes in holistic financial planning and retirement planning for individuals, families, and women. And Elke also oversees the technology and innovation strategy for her practice. So welcome, Elke. And last but not least, Warren Ingram, who needs no introduction. I'm sure most of you recognize him. He's a well-known financial planner in our market. He's written 2 best-selling books on personal finance, is regularly featured in the press, and also hosts his own podcast, HonestMoney. And he co-founded Galileo Capital Group almost 20 years ago and now employs over 100 people across 6 offices around South Africa. So, thank you. So to kick us off, before we go into really the strategic thinking and future outlook, I thought it would be good to take a moment to actually focus on the clients. That is where this all really starts. So I'd like to start with asking you, what is the biggest challenge or the number one struggle that South Africans are facing in planning their financial future at the moment? I mean, I suppose we always think it's just the problem of saving enough for retirement, but are there other problems that come up again and again in your sort of initial meetings? So I guess I should start with Warren, because with so many women on the panel, Warren, you might not get a word in edgeways.
So I mean, there's a national problem, which we all know, so there's not enough money to get through the end of the month. So I guess that's an obvious thing. Beyond that, making saving and investing accessible for large numbers of South Africans in a sustained way, I think we haven't cracked that problem. So I would guess that's the big issue. Then add financial planning to that and it becomes even more of a difficult thing, because it's such a difficult thing to access. I'm hoping for at least a little while longer it's still going to be a very personalized thing, financial planning. And if that's the case, then it's really available to a very small portion of South Africa's population. So that's the big macro problem. And then within that, how do we get people who have got some money to be able to save consistently? So I think the 2-pot thing is an amazing step forward. I just wish we could have done compulsory contribution at the same time, but I'm sure it's coming somewhere along the line. So for me, very big macro thing, that would be the big answer.
It's just not saving enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess our industry and the whole industry is creating those, how do we save $50 a month? Like, how do we nudge someone who's got a cell phone, got some money coming in and out of their account? Like, how can they, at that moment, add money to a long-term account? And if we can start to do that consistently, I think that, we change the whole face of our industry and our country.
Absolutely. Elke, do you want to add anything?
I think from a financial planning point of view, I think what I'm seeing a lot is I think people just want to know if they're okay. I think people want to know, are they saving enough, those that can, those that are still accumulating wealth, and those that are already retired, they want to know if their money will last. It's as simple as that. And I think there's a lot of change, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's affecting people's lives, it's affecting their jobs, it's affecting their ability to retire, and it's very hard. All those things affect your finances, and a lot of people don't always know how they're doing.
Yeah, the holistic piece, I suppose.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good opportunity to go to the audience as well. I know we've got a lot of planners, and Prieshka has very helpfully set up these polls on Mentimeter for us. So maybe we should see if, and I have to admit, I didn't have Warren and Elke's answers before we put some of the answers on for you to vote on. But it's the same code as earlier. So can we go to the question? So what is the biggest challenge or number one struggle that people in the audience are struggling with their clients? So, yeah, is it not being able to save enough? Is it a low level of financial education? Is it just being uncomfortable with volatility and sitting in, a bank account and being too afraid to actually invest in funds? Is it perhaps that they haven't included their spouse in the plan and they're not on the same page? People wanting to immigrate. Can't even remember what all we wrote here. Oh yeah, lack of trust due to previous poor advice or disappointing investment returns. Intergenerational wealth transfer. I suppose that's a luxury problem to have, so maybe that's why we're not getting a lot of votes there. And then other. Okay, so it looks like overwhelmingly it's the struggling to save enough. So which sort of talks to, and I suppose that creates the anxiety and all the other issues as well that Elke spoke about. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So maybe now, knowing that there's all these problems and that advisors and planners want to spend most of their time in meetings with clients addressing those, I think that brings me on to sort of a meaty topic of today is the practice management challenge. So if you're trying to spend a lot of time face-to-face with clients, but you're also trying to manage a business or run an entrepreneurial venture, how do you manage all of that? And I think, Kath, you probably have some interesting perspectives on that, given the work that Carmel Wealth has been doing in South Africa. So maybe you can kick us off there.
Yeah, so I guess the biggest practice management challenge, I think, is largely around succession planning, the one I come across. I think because it's really hard to get right. It's really complicated. It takes a very long time. It needs to be considered, and there's not a one-size-fits-all. So, every independent practice is kind of like this living organism that evolves and has different needs and growth aspirations, and their succession plan actually really needs to be fitted to that business. I think the options out there in terms of getting support to solve for that need haven't really fitted the independent particularly well. So the incumbent models typically are very much a business model that relies on vertical integration. So you will find that in order to find succession capital or to find growth capital, it often comes with some form of compromise to independence, which doesn't suit kind of the fiercely independent practice. So I think around succession planning, that's a huge kind of area that we can go deep into.
And surely the relationship element, people don't like just having their financial advisor changed over to someone else. Surely it's
a long journey to get it right. Yeah. It's definitely, there's no quick fix. There's definitely no quick fix on that. Another one that I'm seeing a lot of, and actually having worked with practices recently, even really, really good ones, don't necessarily have cybersecurity requirements up to scratch.
Okay.
So there's the joint standards coming up, and it's hard to get right. So kind of an anecdotal example, there's a company that's 100% owned by the Carmel Wealth Group, and we did a project on getting cybersecurity up to scratch. And it took an incredible amount of research, really experienced team to go and figure out what is actually a good standard and an operating model, kind of navigate the providers, do the due diligence, negotiate pricing, implement. The bill came to a few R100,000.
Wow.
And the cost wasn't the biggest issue. I think this entire maybe topic of practice management is the time involved in all of it, in terms of when do the leaders of these practices, who are often attracting and retaining clients themselves, when do they find the time to worry about cybersecurity or actually getting on top of the succession plan and making traction in that way.
And I suppose, especially with cybersecurity, it's not something that's front of mind until you have an incident, until you kind of have a hack or something that your client's data gets leaked or something like that.
Yeah. So I think maybe more macro. I mean, you were good to start at macro earlier before we go micro. Macro, I think the practice management challenge is the time to manage a practice, but then there are so many elements that are kind of key at the moment that you see as a theme that IFAs are struggling with.
Okay. Maybe, Elke, do you have different ones, same ones?
Same ones. I think we're all struggling with the same things. I think what's breaking the camel's back is the combination of all these things, because they all take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And as we've said, a lot of IFAs are owner managed, and you end up spending all your time and energy doing something that you're not particularly good at, actually.
It's a typical small business problem, I suppose.
Exactly. I mean, I often find that sometimes more than half my time is spent working on the business as opposed to working in the business. And that's just not sustainable. And I know you said, I think one of the smartest things you ever did was appoint a business manager. And a lot of businesses are not quite at that point that they can financially do that, but that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, I think you don't want to take too much credit and say it's probably force, because I'm not good at it. So it was either keep messing it up or get someone to do it who can do a really good job. And maybe that just understanding that resource for a small business is phenomenally expensive if it's a good resource. And equally, I would say the other issue would be around the technology of our businesses as a whole. So aggregating data, reporting that back to our clients in a format that actually makes sense to them, forget about just making sense to us, and then in a way that they can interrogate. So I mean, I think in a business like ours, we're over 1.2 million rand a year just trying to get data, which should be free.
Wow.
Packaging it and then giving it back to our clients in a way that they can understand. And then what's really depressing is that then half of them complain that they would like it cut up and sliced in a different way. Just
formats.
Send me a WhatsApp with my value, or I want like everything.
I want it in a spreadsheet, please.
And everywhere I've ever wanted to cut and dice it my way, and why don't you do something like that? So I think that those things are, but equally, I mean, if we sound like we're complaining, we're not really, because I mean, you asked us the question. I think it's making it very hard for incumbents, not for incumbents, for new people to come in. So what's happening is we're sitting with now a regulatory moat around our business, and then we're getting technology moat around our business. So it is hard for us. It's phenomenally difficult for the bright youngster that's sitting there with the ability, the will to come in and start on their own.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you grew your practice, at what point could you afford to start bringing in those kind of resources, if you're willing to share that in broad brush strokes?
I mean, the answer is that we're probably operating, it's a profit margin way below 20%. So the answer is probably we still can't afford it.
Okay, it's an investment in the future.
It's an investment in the business. And so, I mean, I think that it's a case, once you're at sort of maybe 5 or 6 financial planners, because it's planners and then it's support staff and then everything else, I would think that that's probably the time when you're starting to invest in some form of operational practice management, etc. I mean, we took a very senior kind of exec from one of the big platforms and put him into our business. I mean, so I think that was probably an overinvestment now, but will be...
But you've seen the difference that it made, I suppose.
I can go on holiday now.
Okay. That's important.
And the point there is that it's probably a very good outcome in 5 years' time.
Okay. No, that's great. So maybe one more poll for the audience, just to make sure that we're getting everyone's perspectives as well. So again, what are your biggest challenges for the planners in the room that you're facing in managing your practice as well? So this is making me think I need to go and get my eyes tested. Sorry. Developing a unique value proposition, growing the business or acquiring clients, keeping up with client servicing needs, building multi-generational client relationships, developing a succession plan, hiring and managing staff, selecting appropriate investments, conducting ongoing due diligence, streamlining operations, compliance and regulating responsibilities, tech and data needs, and other. Okay. Yeah, so the compliance and regulatory responsibilities, the tech and data, and growing the business. So very much the forerunners there. So I feel like we did touch on all of that. Okay, compliance and regulatory responsibilities, which was your regulatory moat that you spoke of, Warren. So it seems like that's a common one. Thank you. While we're on this topic, maybe it's a chance for us to talk about what DFMs are offering IFAs and investment managers as well, I suppose, in terms of you're getting a lot of services marketed to you by DFMs and investment managers trying to help the work that you do and support you. I mean, is there something that's missing there? Is there someone that nobody's doing that someone should be doing, or what's working well? I don't know who wants to. I'll open it to the floor, and whoever wants to start can jump in.
I can see perhaps turn it around a bit and perhaps just see why we as a business decided to use a DFM. And I think in that we'll get the answer. But, for us, I started my career in the stockbroking world and spent an entire hour talking to a client about every single share in the share portfolio, and which is crazy if you think about it, because that person might be going through a divorce or has got a life-threatening disease, and here we are talking about a 2% Naspers weighting rebalance. It's just crazy if you think about it. So when we started this business, we really, really wanted to change the conversations we're having, and outsourcing the investment decision. It's a simple thing, but it allows you. It's sort of a bit of a passing the
hospital pass.
Yeah, yes, it's a bit of a hospital pass, but it's a powerful tool because it does allow you to change that conversation. So that was one which I did. Massively so. Secondly, I think it is time and expertise. We are very good at building relationships with our clients and helping our clients understand what their needs are. To spend our days analyzing funds and doing due diligence was just not conducive to building a sustainable business. Thirdly, I think for us, what I think DFMs do really well, the other crazy thing I think about this industry is if all of us wrote a financial plan for a client, the client would get different plans. Every single one of us would give that client a different recommendation, which is crazy. But it means there's no wrong or right. There's just we need to get from A to B. And we will get there. All of us will get our clients from A to B, but we might get there a little bit differently. So how can we get there in the most efficient way is really what we, I think, needed help with. So really considering the risk, perhaps, that you take. So not taking unnecessary risk in a client portfolio and helping with a proper strategic asset allocation and just those efficiencies to get from A to B, I think they do really well.
That makes sense.
You want to jump in?
Yeah, so maybe to start with why we never used one, because it really bothered me when they would arrive, and so I knew I could go and pick one passive fund, one active fund on a list and deal with 90% of my individual clients' issues. And then the DFM would arrive to say, look what we can do for you. Here's our massive team. We've got all this research capability, and it's incredible. We can put 54 funds into this one portfolio, and the South African market's like this big, but we're going to do this for you. And how are you going to do that? No, well, we're going to do all this research and everything, and then we're going to add our cost on. So it's more expensive for the client. So I sort of smiled politely, and I took my biscuits away that I'd offered them, and then arranged the end of the meeting as fast as possible. And that, for me, felt like the case for quite some time, especially in South Africa. And yes, they would go and find the boutiques or whatever, but the cost benefit wasn't there. So what's changed for me more recently is that the cost benefit's starting to come in. I'm a little bit bleak, because now what happens is I'll speak to a platform or a manco and I'll say, gee, I'd love to access this fund. I can I've heard that you can, you can give it to people at 0.25% a year. Yeah, but you just have to be a DFM.
So they negotiated sort of bulk a
Here we
wholesale
go.
class.
So I mean, when you see the consolidations happening and stuff, and the DFM start to say things like, "Well, we've got scale and we've got size," it means that they found a way to make themselves exist at a cost slightly better cost. But still, if I could get that for the client, not charge a DFM fee, the client would be better off. So I'm just going to leave that out there for the audience. But then where I believe they add. Why are we then looking at them, and why are we then deciding to use one is, I think internationally, I have no competence to go and find a bunch of funds out there that are good for clients at the right price, and then all the scale and stuff that they've got means that they can go and negotiate a better fee than I could ever get. I can't get on a plane to New York. I really don't want to get on a plane to New York unless it's for holiday, and now I'll go and say to them, hey, here's us, can you please give us your fund at this massive wholesale price? I mean, I wouldn't even get a meeting. So I think that the DFMs are starting to add value on that side. They are, I mean, in your old family kind of vibe, the ecosystem that they can provide elsewhere, in addition to that pure multi-manager function, whatever you want to call it, I think that could be good to Chris's earlier presentation, creating some sort of an ecosystem. But it bothers me that it's like another layer of cost, and then listening to alternatives coming in, I'm just thinking it's more cost. And we did a really good job, I thought, as financial planners driving the industry down, and now they found a way to bulk up costs again somehow.
So I think it's interesting that both you and Elke were looking for ways to free up your time and drive efficiencies in your businesses, but there were different ways of doing it. So Elke went the DFM route and you went the route of hiring someone to run the practice. So I suppose in both approaches, you were freeing up your own time, but in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, you're good at, I'm trying to be good at talking to people. That's what we do well. And so we should really do that. Yeah. And then everything else should happen around us, to the benefit of our clients. So, and us running a tech platform is really not good for us or our clients. So I mean, I don't speak for Elke; she can do that. I can't do that. So I think speaking to clients is the core job, and using tech to do that, and using tech to find solutions for everything else would be amazing.
Okay.
Can I weigh in on this one?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, Chris was speaking about market dynamics and trend earlier on, and really kind of the asset manager as the product provider and the DFM as the solution provider. And I think that evolution has been really interesting in DFMs looking to enable practices to scale, in some instances from being able to have a kind of sets of solutions that they access all the time, so that becomes more efficient in the planning process. But actually the list of services that DFMs now offer, if you go onto a website, it's a long list. I mean, there'll be like marketing and compliance and technology, and it's not just investment management, it's like this whole, how do we help these practices scale and thrive kind of ecosystem, which is really interesting if those peripheral services aren't at the cost of the quality of the investment part of it, right? Because actually, if an advisor or a client could get a better solution from an asset manager, but the practice is getting all the benefits of the DFM, then you've got like a bit of a moral dilemma, because how do you fire your DFM if your practice is reliant on them for business support, but actually your client's not getting the best outcome they could in the market? So it's a very interesting space that we're going into now in terms of this kind of proliferation of DFMs and the rise in the market share and exactly what a DFM does for a practice's business. What's interesting to me is the fact that the need that is being solved there is one that is so acute, where it is so expensive and time-consuming and difficult to run a practice that doesn't have scale. So IFAs need support in being able to grow and scale and run thriving practices. DFMs have offered one way of doing that through technology and. But yeah, I think part of what we're looking to solve for in the market is to solve for that need in a different way. Yeah.
No, that's helpful. And I think that leads me on to where I wanted to sort of end. I think we've got 5 minutes left. And I wanted to talk about how does one grow one's practice and the client acquisition, and maybe for each of you to share a little bit about what your unique value proposition is or your secret sauce. And I think, Kath, I suppose from the Carmel perspective, that'll be a little bit different too from the actual individual independent financial advisor practice. But maybe you can start there, because I know we've touched on it in terms of what you were saying about helping the advisors become more efficient, but maybe just expand on that a bit. How will that help them grow their practices?
So I suppose simply Carmel Wealth is an investment partner for growth and succession to independent IFAs and very strictly in the independent market, because the business model is to, kind of retain that independence as sacrosanct. So, and that can be very tailored solutions. So there's not kind of this like, what do you need? We have a template. Let's slap a new name on the door, and you're going to be kind of using this way forward going on, into the future. So it's very much a what do you need and how can we help? And there have been IFAs that are looking to find an equity partner where they can provide a mechanism to younger advisors to get equity in the business, bring on a minority partner for growth and succession support and business support, for example. There's been all kinds of things, small advisory practices that are looking for a bigger infrastructure. But really at the core of it, it's without the compromise of independence of product choice, and without the compromise of losing your brand identity and your ability to run your business, because it takes really strong entrepreneurs to run a thriving practice in this market. So it's kind of not really best to mess with that. It's best to kind of enhance that. So it's quite I don't think it's been tried before, and that's kind of the key differentiator. Yeah.
Maybe if I can just, it was never by design. I think for our business to be, we're an all-female business, an all-female team, and we have about 65% of our clients are women. It was never by design. I think it kind of just happened naturally by accident. But I think it's telling us something. I think it might tell us that there is an opportunity in financial planning to plan for women. I think there's a lot of talk about this big generational wealth shift where money is moving from baby boomers that are passing away. It's the wealthiest generation there's ever been. And the money is not going to the children, it's going to the wives first, because women live longer. And a lot of those women, statistically, a lot of the women really, especially from that generation, are a bit deer in headlights. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to talk to. But a lot of research is showing that those women are incredibly empowered, especially when they work with a financial planner. That sort of confidence gap between men and women dramatically closes when working with a financial planner. So I think it's a really interesting market. There's also a lot changing in the world. I saw a stat the other day that said that they reckon by 2030, 45% of women between the age of 25 and 40 will be single.
Wow.
So that's very different than what the world looked like 20, 30, 40 years ago. So I think it's an interesting area to plan for, and it's something in our business that I see.
And it sounds like a massive opportunity for growth. So that's kind of 50% of our market that nobody's been really speaking to in a meaningful way, sort of in days gone by.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Warren, that's a great segue to you. How have you grown your business?
Just thinking, I've got some bad news for my wife. My business partner and I are the world's worst networkers and marketing people. So we really had to find a way very quickly after about 3 years of starting our businesses life and getting our clients. And so we just got onto every media platform we could and just did as much financial education as we could in the most honest and integrous way we could. And so that's just never stopped. We just carry on and commit a huge amount of time to doing that. And that's why it's writing the books, getting on podcasts, doing as many educational talks at universities and everything that we could. And somehow that worked. So I can't say I've got a genius strategy, and that says time's up, so I'll be fast.
No.
So I can't say that we had a very brilliant marketing strategy and this is how it all worked out. It just was sheer dumb luck in a way because we had no other skills. So we said, well, let's go with that. And then relentless focus on being the guys that drive costs down, being the guys that are not scared to say, hey, look, this isn't working for our clients. What can we do? And so somehow nearly 20 years later, we're still standing. But people always ask, how did you get clients? I still can't tell you the answer.
Oh, well, it's been successful, so well done. And yeah, thank you very much. I think if I had to sum up today, and maybe following on from what Chris's presentation before when he was looking to parallels in the music industry, if I had to maybe look to parallels in the engineering industry of what we're trying to do in terms of helping advisors to be more efficient and focus on the client conversations, I saw an engineering firm talking about the future of AI and how it was going to affect their industry. And they sum it up by saying it's about preventing downtime, ensuring safety, and optimizing performance, which I thought sounds like what's come up in our conversation here, maybe in another context. So thank you very much for your time today.